Recording.
Welcome everybody. My name is DJ Taylor and I'd like to thank you all for joining me and thank everybody who is watching online. I'm sure at least some of you in the audience today have heard Benjamin Franklin's quote, "Nothing in this life can be said to be certain except death and taxes." Death, although it is certain, does seem to cause people a lot of feelings of uncertainty. When someone near to you passes, you might have a lot of questions. You may not even know where to begin. I'm here today to give you information on the legal documents required before anything can be done for the deceased, and two of the options you have when it comes to the final arrangements for the deceased: cremation or preservation with embalming. You may be feeling uncertain now. You may be wondering why you'd even want to learn about a topic so unsettling. Well, although the death of a loved one can never be easy, knowing this information before you have to experience it firsthand can help you feel better prepared when it comes to making those final arrangements for a loved one. It can also help you to make decisions about and prepare your own final arrangements, helping to lighten the load on your loved one's shoulders once you pass. I would like to take a moment to thank Valden G. Christensen of Dakin Funeral Chapel for allowing me to interview him and tour his beautiful facility. That is where I obtained the majority of my information, along with the book, Caring for the Dead, Your Final Act of Love by Lisa Carlson, published at Upper Access Incorporated, and the Idaho County website. Before anything can be done for the deceased, as far as cremation, embalming, or burial, you are required to obtain a death certificate, and in some cases an autopsy must be performed and a burial transit permit obtained. A death certificate is an official statement signed by a physician stating the cause, date, and place of a person's death. How do you get a death certificate? The death certificate is generally signed and supplied by a medical examiner or family physician within 72 hours of the death. However, if you have a funeral home handling the arrangements, they will often supply you with the death certificate. You can also contact the Vital Statistics Office and request one. When you receive a death certificate signed by the medical examiner or physician, the cause, date, and place of death will already be documented. However, additional information will need to be supplied by the persons administering the final arrangements. After the death certificate is filled out, it must be filed with the local registrar within 5 days. One of the most important pieces of information on the death certificate is the cause of death. But how is the cause of death determined? In cases where the death is expected, such as in a hospital or nursing home, the coroner, an elected official to investigate cause of death, can make a decision without an autopsy. But in cases when the death is violent, unexpected, or unusual, or uncertain, an autopsy must be performed. An autopsy is a special procedure that consists of a thorough examination of a corpse through dissection to determine the cause and manner of death and to evaluate any injury or disease that is present. The coroner can appoint a qualified specialist in pathology, also known as a medical examiner, to conduct the examination. A coroner may also request special examination of certain organs or fluids by other experts when necessary. After the cause of death is determined and the death certificate is obtained, if the deceased is to be transported over state lines, a burial transit permit must be obtained. The death certificate consists of 3 carbon copies. The second, which should be blue, serves as a burial transit permit. It is also necessary to have a physician or coroner's authorization to transport the deceased across state lines. If the deceased is to be transported by a commercial carrier, for example, an airline, they must be embalmed or cremated prior to transportation. You've heard the words cremation and embalming used a few times already, but what do they mean? Cremation is the process in which a body is reduced to ashes by fire. Once a decision to cremate has been made, you must provide proper documents and you must provide a proper cremation container. First is the death certificate, signed by a physician or medical examiner, the person administering the final arrangements, and a representative of the state's Department of Vital Statistics. Secondly, you will need the crematory certification of cremation authorization. This form can be authorized by the next of kin, but a person can also authorize their own cremation as part of a pre-need plan, arranging one's own funeral. You will also be required to provide a cremation permit from the coroner, and if the deceased was transported over state lines, you will need to provide the burial transit permit. The cremation container is a container which the deceased is burned in. When it comes to choosing a container, you have a few options. One option is a casket, as long as it is not made of fiberglass or plastic or lined with polyvinyl. Another choice for a cremation container would be a box made by a funeral home director of pine, rosewood, or other combustible materials. You also have the option of an alternative cremation container made of heavy cardboard with a thin piece of plywood under the deceased. On top of providing proper documentation and a proper cremation container, be sure to ask for any valuables the person may have been wearing prior to cremation. Cremated remains are normally kept in an urn or scattered somewhere outdoors. However, the remains can be buried just as though who have been preserved with embalming. Embalming is the process in which the blood and bodily fluids are removed from the body and replaced with chemicals that temporarily retard decay and restore a lifelike condition for the purpose of public viewing. You may have noticed embalming is often a requirement. Embalming is a requirement for all open casket viewings, even if the deceased is to be cremated after a viewing. Embalming is required for out-of-state transfers, like I mentioned earlier. It is not a requirement for someone to be embalmed to be buried in the state of Idaho. However, the laws vary from state to state. So, would you want to be cremated? Would you want to be embalmed? Have you talked about this with your family? As I mentioned before, although the topic may be unpleasant, being knowledgeable about it and talking with your family about it before experiencing it firsthand can really help relieve a lot of stress when it comes down to making those final arrangements. Once again, thank you all. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.